Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you here today with an article from Red State dated June 4th. It says, after terror attack on Jews, CNN sent extremism expert to Colorado. What he focused on was a disgrace. So before we get in the article, if you remember that CNN has that far left guy, that Donnie O'Sullivan, he's an Irish guy that seems to not realize that that there's any left-wing violence going out there. So it's all coming from the right, even though he really can't name any. But every single time there's some left-wing instance of violence now, he's just like his head is buried in the sand. So, and if you remember too, another thing to preface the article here was this was when the Muslim Egyptian guy threw Molotov cocktails at a bunch of Jews that were just doing like a release the hostages sort of thing. It wasn't like a protest. It was just kind of like a march for them. That was it. And that was, from the time you're listening to this, that was like probably a week ago. So that's just kind of setting this up. So just keep those things in mind when we go through this so that we can see what CNN sent their extremism expert to go and find. And they sent him to Colorado, which is where that attack happened. And this picture that you're looking at right now as I'm talking, that is the guy. That is their extremism expert who might be retarded. So it says, as the targeted violence in this country continues, it is becoming obvious that the media are in a precarious position of their own making. Extremism is growing, and it is a development as a result of either their acceptance or willful avoidance of the subject. The prime example of the latter occurred when CNN looked at a disturbing act of violence in Boulder, Colorado, and dispatched its expert on the matter to ignore the case entirely. And you're going to like what he was focused on there, because that's kind of the point of the article too, but it's going to get there. It says it's become an undeniable fact that the press has a problem grappling with the explosion of anti-Semitism in the country. Just look at the way they address blatant examples of hatred from the left, resorting to veiled wording and deflecting to lectures on how there's a proper way to respond. Let's see, what is this linked to? Oh, this is one of the CNN panels. I'm not even going to try. It's probably Scott Jennings explaining to all of them why they're stupid. It says they strain to explain away the motivations that suddenly lone wolf attacks are acceptable. Yeah, it was that lone wolf thing is a reference. I think it was MSNBC, because of course it was. So it's something about like, I can't remember. I think it was about the Molotov cocktail guy where they said like lone wolf attacks are becoming more prevalent. It's like, well, then it's not a lone wolf. Like the whole definition of a lone wolf is that it's like one person, one time, not like a bunch of people at a bunch of different times. Okay, so I'll start that sentence over. It says they strain to explain away the motivations. Suddenly, lone wolf attacks are acceptable, or redefine who the victims are. It says NBC News pulled a muscle with this explanation, and clicking on that link, it's what does it say? Oh, you can't read it there. Okay, whatever. It says, and then, of course, they intone to us about how we should not blame one side, which is blatantly false. So somehow they always fear the potential for violence more than the presentation of actual violence. And then it says, CNN has been at the forefront of this reaction, with their pundits becoming enraged that the FBI's Kash Patel and Dan Bongino dared to declare that a man who firebombed Jewish citizens over his announced opposition to the Israel-Palestine war committed an act of terrorism. Well, isn't that what it is? Politically based violence is terrorism. I mean, that's what it is, and that's what that guy did. I mean, it's like the actual definition of it. As they followed up this bizarre reaction with another revealing example from their broadcast. On Anderson Cooper's AC 360, there's probably like 12 people watching that, he brought on the network's designated extremism correspondent, Donnie O'Sullivan, who was reporting from Colorado. O'Sullivan is the reporter who recently made a special for the network on extremism in the country, in which he declared he could not find examples of political extremism on the left. Yes, that's an actual thing that happens. Never mind that virtually all of the extremism that's in political violence that's happened in the last decade has come from the left. He just can't find it, though. Apparently he's just been sleeping. So he then followed this genius hot take by sitting with the ever-disturbed Taylor Lorenz, and if you don't know who she is, I'd probably actually say don't look her up. You might find one of the that you're going to go brain dead just because she's one of the dumbest people. She's a supposed journalist. She's, just so you know really quick, she's the woman who doxed libs of TikTok. And she makes a living just by saying extremely stupid things. And she thinks she's a journalist. So I'd say, like I said, don't go look her up because you're probably going to get brain cancer from it. So then the two were giggling over the infatuation with confessed murderer Luigi Mangione. So yeah, you can tell just where these people's mindset is, where their morals are. So this was the man with empirical wisdom on the topic of political violence appearing on primetime. So what did the extremism expert deliver to CNN's audience about the firebomb attack Sunday and the background and motivations of the extremist who launched Molotov cocktails at a crowd and injured children and a Holocaust survivor? The answer to that is nothing. Not a thing. So it turns out Donnie was on scene in Denver to cover something ostensibly far more important, the trial of the MyPillow magnate Mike Lindell. It says currently Lindell is facing a defamation lawsuit from an employee of Smartmatic Voting Systems, one of two suits brought against the businessman over his comments regarding the 2020 election results. So obviously, for their extremism expert, going to cover Mike Lindell's trial is somehow more important than, the extremism thing that happened. Okay. It says O'Sullivan delivered the pertinent details of the case and spoke with Lindell directly. He reported how the jury pool faced questions about the type of pillows they use, noting that many were dismissed if they attested to owning a MyPillow of their own. Then he wrapped by suggesting to Anderson Cooper that he could provide the host with his very own pillow. The host declined the offer for full disclosure. Who cares? So there you have it. The network, priding itself on being on the cutting edge of breaking news, sees a grievous, hate-filled political attack and spends the next day telling us how not to describe what happened, reframing the events, and now sending correspondents out to distract with alternate reports from the area. It really is no mystery why we keep seeing examples of this anti-Semitism popping up. It is less of a mystery why this network continues to dissolve on a regular basis. So you'd think that a news organization, CNN, would actually be interested in, the extremism going on. And so instead they send this goofball to report on something that has nothing to do with extremism in any way, shape, or form to the same state where, where the actual event happened. Okay, it's ridiculous. So that's what I have to say. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.